Romeo and Juliet is a very well-known story, but I'll recap the short points here. The story is about two teenagers, Juliet around 14 and Romeo around 16, although he could potentially be as old as 20. Ugh. Juliet is a girl, Romeo is a boy. He's struggling with unrequited feelings towards a girl named Rosalind, who is supposed to be going to this party at the Capulets. The Capulets are an enemy house of Romeo's own house, the Montagues. But he goes anyway, partially due to being an adventurous young man, and partially due to his friends goading him into attending the party. Romeo and his friends crash the party, and there Romeo meets Juliet. Juliet and Romeo fall in love despite their families. Together, they renounce their families privately in the name of love. They secretly get married, but the hatred and feud between their families results in most of the principal cast of young heroes dying. Every young hero, with the exception of Benvolio, dies by the end of the story. Now, what I take away from the story is an obvious message. Old feud's primary victims are young people, conscripted into something they have no autonomy or will in participating in. Senseless hatred incites violence, and usually those facilitating it aren't the ones most harmed by it. It is a classic story and extremely moving. There's a reason it resonates with so many people. But the obvious question to be asked here is, what if it was an anime? That question is a little reductive and rude. I mean, Romeo and Juliet is such an ever-present story that there's many retellings and reimaginings. West Side Story, Romeo plus Juliet, and Rosalind are all inspired by Romeo and Juliet. And let's not forget the modern masterpiece, Romeo and Juliet. But let's take a look at Romeo x Juliet. Some background information of this story is that it's done by Gonzo, a now more or less defunct studio. But historically, it has made some very popular shows, like Welcome to the NHK, 2001's Hellsing, not Ultimate, and Afro Samurai. However, among their catalog of inconsistent quality, we also find this show, Romeo x Juliet. Let's take a peek and see what's going on here. Now, Romeo x Juliet is a pretty loose adaptation of the story. Starting with the similarities, first, character names. Some are the same. Pedantically, those are only Tybalt and Mercutio, because they add some random surname titles to other characters. Romeo Montague? No, I think you mean
Romeo Candore de Montague!
Juliet Capulet? No, stupid. That's Red Whirlwind. It's Odin? Wait, what's her name?
I am Juliet Fiammata, Ars de Capulet!
Well, regardless, this is primarily the case with these two, but a couple other characters also get fancier names. Otherwise, there's some other loose inspiration with the tragic structure and star-crossed forbidden lovers aspects of this anime, but very generally, we find influence just being that. The premise. The show takes place in Verona. I mean Neo Verona. The name thing's not done yet. This one flies and has flying dragon horses. What makes it fly? Don't worry, we'll get to that later. First, we have to get you a picture of the principal cast of characters. Then we'll get to the story. So Romeo and Juliet are the leads, naturally. But Juliet is the more focused character out of the duo, and I think that's due to the fact that this is a love story. They figured it was more female targeted and therefore gave more to Juliet. It's fine, but it's apparent at times. I mean, Romeo's sort of stock male lead. It's kind of dumb and somewhat just, and he really loves his wife.
My wife! I love my wife!
He loses some spunk and charm of a good Romeo performance by being flatter and one-dimensional character. I mean, sometimes he just feels like a cardboard cutout or a marionette. Juliet is more interesting, but she doesn't have much depth. She likes Romeo. She cares about doing the right thing, similar to Romeo. She doesn't really have much deep characterization other than that. She's just lacking Where she stands out is being a vigilante. This aspect to her is interesting and shows her interest in helping people, but still pretty shallow. Outside the leaves, we'll continue with the other characters who exist in both the original and this adaptation. Benvolio is the most consistent character in both. He's just sort of a stupid nice guy. He's a mega himbo and he's pretty chill. There isn't much to say about him. Every other character is either completely different or not in the original. Tybalt in this is not an angry Capulet, but an angry Capulet and the half-brother of Romeo. He's a dark, edgy anime boy and wants to kill his father, Prince Montague. He rides around on a flying midnight black dragon horse. It's really a sight to be seen. Mercutio is a political climber, aiming to raise his own rank and an evil manipulator at times. This is interesting compared to their source material, as in the source, he goads Romeo to act in the name of love, but not for any personal gain. Prince Montague, Romeo's father, is completely different, being an extraordinary evil, but also being the son of a Capulet noble and a woman of the night. This disturbingly possibly makes Romeo and Juliet related, depending on what kind of Capulet noble Montague is the son of. This disregards the whole two houses alike in nobility thing and makes this family tree more like a family wreath. These are the core cast of characters who share in both the original and this adaptation. There's a bunch of other characters I'll go over quick. Cordelia may be a loose adaptation of Juliet's nurse. She's her best friend and like a sister to her. They were rescued from the Montague coup together. Hermione is Romeo's betrothed, and she's just like really, really boring, and she's often manipulated by characters. She's a good person, but boring. Francisco, Conrad, Antonio, Lancelot, and Curio are all Capulet loyalists and complete OC. Francisco and Curio are infatuated with Juliet. Curio is a big buff guy and sort of a himbo. Francisco is a smarty pants, but also stated to be a womanizer. Antonio, he's just like Juliet's younger brother, more or less, but he like doesn't fucking matter. Conrad and Lancelot are kinda her guardians, sorta. Conrad saved Juliet and Cordelia from the coup. Lancelot exists for like 7 episodes, I guess. The two most wild characters here in the rest of the cast are Willie, who is no joke, a stand-in for William Shakespeare. He's a playwright who's somewhat flamboyant, but also smart and knows a lot, and he post-sticks around quoting real-life Shakespeare. Lastly, Ophelia is a tree witch. She speaks in rhymes and is really weird, but also like sort of the best character in the whole show because she just stands around rhyming while Prince Montague, that's Romeo's dad, he hates her. He just gets really annoyed while she's like sitting next to him expositing and rhyming. It's really funny. Anyways, I'll draw attention to the fact that Romeo's group is all based on the play, whereas Juliet's are all whole cloth OC, as I stated earlier. I mean, for the purposes of the show, I think it's to make it function. I think it's interesting, but it's clear that it's just Romeo had a group of boys he hung out with in the source material, whereas Juliet had a nursemaid lady who may have become Cordelia, and that's about it. Due to this, they have to just create these new characters for Juliet, and this is either even further complicated by her being the primary lead over Romeo. So whereas Romeo is essentially just the source character and his source character support, Juliet has like a D&D party of invented new characters. Anyway, that's enough about the characters. Let's explore the story. So the story starts with a flashback to the night Montague slaughtered the Capulets, establishing him right out the gates as an evil, very bad man. And just some overarching stuff like the Will of Aeschylus, which will be elaborated on later. We flash forward 14 years after the opening, Juliet being her vigilante self, the Red Whirlwind. She's freeing captured civilians, and then she slips and falls off a roof. Romeo saves her, and that's the meet cute. Juliet in the scene really doesn't like Romeo. And Romeo isn't too keen on this masked vigilante who didn't thank him for saving his life. His being Juliet's in this case, because Juliet cross-dresses to hide her identity, and she goes by the name Odin normally, but even as the Red Whirlwind, she stays in this masculine persona. Over the course of the episode, we are introduced to New Verona, the floating continent, and the fact that there are flying dragon horses in this world. I won't get over that fact. All this really isn't relevant, but it's fine. We're shown Juliet's first time going out, presenting female, and we see her meeting with Romeo again, who was really bored with Hermione, his betrothed, and just wanders off to the courtyard and ends up meeting up with Juliet again, having a second meet cute. That's pretty much episode 1. I simplified some stuff, but generally this show has a problem with efficiently conveying information. There's also some confusing storytelling involving timelines, events, and character information. An example is Antonio, this worthless little trash can brother character, never knew Juliet was a girl, and Cordelia talks about it being their secret, as in her and Juliet's. But also Curio and Francisco both knew the whole time that, as they were infatuated with her and not Odin. So either they knew or they didn't. Which one? I mean, maybe they were infatuated with Odin. That's fine, but it doesn't seem like that was the message being conveyed. Also, Juliet has been a vigilante for like some large denomination of time, but she just turned 16 and never uses a weapon or a sword or anything while being a vigilante, and is scared of hurting others even though she carries a sword with her. I mean, I guess the sword she carries just for like cutting ropes or whatever, and it's not for people, is all like marginally whatever, but a lot of weird anachronisms like this really add together and weaken the overall product. I may at some point do a full breakdown of the show, but I'm just going to simplify a lot and just condense the whole series. Over the next couple episodes, Romeo and Juliet deepen their relationship. We learn about the oppressive and awful lives of the locals of Neo Verona, and Romeo and Juliet's secrets get revealed to one another. Juliet's secrets being her being a girl, and also the Red Whirlwind and all that stuff. Romeo's is that he's a Nepo baby. In the coming episodes, we meet more of the characters, and really what's being conveyed is just the deepening relationship between Juliet and Romeo, and the corruptions of Prince Montague. There's also this really funny thing where Prince Montague is going and talking to this strange woman named Ophelia, who lives in his basement next to a tree and only speaks in rhymes, and he hates it, and he hates her, and it's really funny.
The land laments. The waters run dry. All things that grow now must die.
Never forget, I am the Prince of Neo Verona.
So, the Montagues couldn't find the Red Whirlwind, who was being such a big problem as a single individual that they decided to cut the rations of the entire populace and gathered up a bunch of falsely accused individuals who were turning on each other for more rations, and they were going to just burn all these people in the pyre. Lancelot, the OC character here, sacrifices himself to prevent the deaths of all these innocent people. He dies, and with it, all the innocents are saved. This causes a fracture in Romeo and Juliet's relationship. Juliet is worried about their relationship, and Romeo just still loves her because he's just a good boy. Romeo's best friend Benvolio and his family is the victim of attempted assassination by the prince. He is saved by Tybalt, and they are brought to the Capulet faction and do the whole "we don't know how to be peasants" thing. Romeo and Juliet make up, they kiss, and over the next couple episodes, Juliet and her faction attempt to take down the Montagues. They fail, and a lot of people are imprisoned. Tybalt rescues Juliet, because if she dies, then the whole Capulet line more or less dies. She runs into Portia, Romeo's mom, who helps her and nurses her back to health. This episode has the adaptation of the balcony scene. It's not very good.
Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?
Are you having regrets?
There is an insurmountable wall between us that we cannot deny.
You thinking what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes.
Bro, what are you doing in the fucking bushes, man? Get out of there. For a while, the show is a slice of life. Romeo and Juliet steal a random cabin in the woods within walking distance of the town. Romeo trades away like a family crest thing. I could make a family jewels joke here, but it's a little low hanging. Anyways, he does this to get random supplies. More is revealed about the Aeschylus magic tree keeping the island afloat. Either now or later, I don't remember when exactly this happens, earthquakes just start on this floating island, which isn't shown how bad that is, but contextually it's pretty obvious. The floating city should not be having earthquakes. Anyways, the Montague men find Romeo's traded in item and go hunting for him. And there's a really stereotypical like, oh, you can't take him scene, and they both sort of like let themselves get captured, and this is all really dumb, and it just annoys me. Juliet gets locked up and then freed over the course of an episode. Romeo is in serious trouble for this, and his dad sends him to manage a prison labor camp. Some mines, like, I don't know, for some reason he's just ordered to turn a profit or he can't come home. So the earthquakes get worse, the mines begin collapsing, and Romeo works hard to save all the prisoners because he's such a good soft boy. He then declares all of them free, which, I mean, based, but logistically, what's going on here? There's definitely implications for how this would affect Neo Verona, but whatever. I guess he can just release them. He can just do that. Anyways, a really funny scene happens where Hermione, Romeo's betrothed, who loves him very much, even though he ghosts her at any given possibility he gets, goes up to Mercutio to voice her concerns about all that's going on with the mine collapse and the absence of Romeo. And so, like a normal sane person, Mercutio convinces her that she should go because Juliet is also missing. And what if they're using that time to steal Romeo from Hermione? So Hermione randomly is discovered by Juliet. She is just on the road and is found by Juliet, and Juliet rescues her and tries to nurse her back to health. And in return, Hermione tries to stab her. But then they work it out and they're all good now, I guess. I don't know. Romeo and the miners, in the meantime, make a village together. Sure, I guess. Juliet starts working with William Shakespeare on enacting a Romeo and Juliet play. What's happening now? Oh, wait. And in this play, Juliet's not playing Juliet. She's cross-dressing again and playing Romeo. And some rando who's been in the series from the beginning, but is really unimportant, so I didn't mention her, is playing the lead girl. This is really weird. Okay, I guess that's all fine. Later, Romeo and Juliet meet back up before the final act of the show. Pretty much everything goes up to 11 in the final act. Juliet starts a coup. Romeo returns to the city as well, but they like do this separately from each other, not together. Juliet and sort of Romeo, but mainly Juliet, learn that the island is dying, or like the fertility and magic is going due to the tree in the Montague's basement dying. We learn a couple things, including the parentage of Prince Montague as a prostitute and a Capulet noble of some denomination, and Tybalt's parentage as a Capulet of some random denomination also, and then Prince Montague as the father. There's some minor political things going on here. It's shown the nobles are losing faith in Montague as he loses more of his grip on reason. Mercutio is shown to be losing his as well, as he was portrayed as more level-headed in the first couple episodes, but now he agrees to work with Prince Montague to burn the city to find Juliet. The prince also randomly murders a noble in front of everyone to get his way. He also murders Mercutio's father in front of him when he tries to blackmail the prince into adopting Mercutio as his heir. I don't know when in the story this has happened, so I'm adding it here because it's funnier, but I also just forgot where this happened while scripting, and I'm not gonna figure it out. Now, towards the end, we're seeing the big bad. Essentially, Aeschylus is a tree that craves Capulet girls every generation. It's really weird, and apparently that's the magic that keeps the country afloat. Is this allusion to the repeated death of women in tragedies or the exploitation of women in art? Probably not. I think it's just because it's plots. I don't know, whatever. I don't think there's greater depth here. That may be a cynical, unfaithful take, but I don't know. Regardless, the resident tree witch Ophelia is here to drop some rhymes with exposition. The end of the story is reaching its breaking point, as everyone is now turned up to 12. Mercutio is burning everything because his new dad really wants to kill Juliet. Romeo and Juliet like mess around a bit. They're just wandering and sort of doing whatever. Romeo sort of kind of stops the city from burning, but it's not conveyed well. There's some slice of life stuff here. Benvolio and Cordelia get married. It's all kind of padding, as it feels like they're trying to reach that 24 episode length. So the next 3 episodes are bonkers though. We start with the storming of the castle. They succeed, and a bunch of people all independently want to kill Prince Montague, but none of them do. Fucking Mercutio from the corner comes in and stabs the shit out of Prince and kills him and giggles like, this makes me the hero now, right? Anyways, this character is wild. So the last 2 episodes are all about the tragedy. So basically Juliet wants to sacrifice herself for the country, but no one wants her to die except the evil tree witch, which I'll discuss later. So the last couple episodes are people trying to convince Juliet not to sacrifice herself, Juliet eventually coming around to the idea of not wanting to die, but then Ophelia just nabs her and tries to commit the sacrifice, sort of succeeding, and then Romeo killing Ophelia, dying in the process, and Juliet sacrificing herself to bring the floating city to the earth. So really, what's the point of this? Why is this adaptation of Romeo and Juliet so interesting? To me, I fail to see the reason to even directly tie Romeo and Juliet into this series. I think it honestly detracts from the overall story and sometimes damages the story itself. I mean, if we look at a glance and see the similarities, it's a lot of surface level stuff, almost exclusively the names of things. Neo Verona being the name of the continent, character sharing names, and the ending being the tragedy are the similarities we see, but even that's a little small. Truly, we're missing the larger truth in Romeo and Juliet. Romeo x Juliet, the anime, seems to be similar in some ways with its moral, but it's really weird. The original is about violence being perpetuated and suffered by young people, and even sometimes spreading to collateral damage. That grudges like the one between the Montagues and Capulets are pointless and harm the younger generation. Romeo x Juliet gives reasons for everything. It's not some archaic, unknown feud between 2 families. It's Prince Montague doing a coup. It's some weird tree spirit demanding the blood of the firstborn Capulet daughter. It's a story that struggles with its concepts, the concepts of its original inspiration. I think directly pulling from the original in such an open way harms the final product. I mean, why even call the show Romeo x Juliet? Comparing it to other modern works inspired by Romeo and Juliet really baffles me. If you compare it, for example, to West Side Story, another work inspired by Romeo and Juliet, it handles the topic of needless hatred way better. It's close enough where you see the original inspiration, but distinct enough where you aren't constantly reminded about Romeo and Juliet when you watch it. Whereas Romeo x Juliet, you're constantly reminded of Shakespeare, from random references to shared names, and like the literal physical embodiment of William Shakespeare being in the show. There is no benefit to this. I don't know why these choices were made. These reminders of the original work do nothing but cause us to compare the two. Frankly, I think this decision is nothing but disastrous for the show. I was reading Saga the graphic novel while working on the script, and I think it helped me put something into perspective. Saga is a great graphic novel. It's adult focused and does a similar star-crossed lovers idea with the 2 leads, Marco and Alana. They are 2 adults from a planet and its extraterrestrial body who are in a war, and we still to this day of recording this do not know the exact reason for the war. The war engulfs the entire universe, but Marco and Alana fall in love and have a child. The story is about consequences of all sorts of feuds and grudges, and how it affects the characters and even those who have no reason to see the repercussions of these feuds. The inspiration is clear, and the lack of direct nods and reference to its inspiration does not detract from the story. When it comes to Romeo x Juliet, it's never pulling enough to really warrant the overt nod to the source. Other show or media adapt more or less from the source while never directly acknowledging it and benefit from the connection greater. Others directly invoke the original, but do so in a more understandably faithful way to their own success. The connection is at best a neat homage, and at worst a failed attempt to gain more relevance to a largely uninspired seasonal anime. Truthfully, I love this anime. but it's a really hard recommend for me. But that doesn't mean I think it should be forgotten. It's an interesting case study on directly using inspiration from a famous work so openly in an animated production. And more interesting to me individually, a Western classic like Romeo and Juliet, I think is a really neat idea for a seasonal anime. I think if you're wanting a good time, watch this with a couple friends and have a laugh maybe. It may be worth your time. Especially if anyone amongst you is a Shakespeare nerd. Doing the homework before watching this and having Google handy really blew my mind while watching it, with some of the random references in here. So maybe if you're bored, you could watch this and come to your own conclusions. It's on Crunchyroll. I don't love Crunchyroll. There's other ways to watch it too. I watched it dubbed, and that was really funny to me. It's how I watched it the first time. I hope that doesn't immediately invalidate everything I said before this. The dub is really interesting. Check it out, maybe. Anyways, thanks for watching my first video. I'm going to give a couple thanks to friends who helped here. So yeah, my first video is done. Thank everyone for watching. Again, thanks to Richard for helping me with the video, Mark for helping me with the audio, Bosch and James for helping me with generally looking over it and making sure it was good. They both watched this video at least twice, I think. Sarah for helping with the scripting, and XX-Girlfriend, amazing shoutouts for making the music. I finally got to use it and I'm really happy with it. Thank you so much. So yeah, thanks to all of them, and thanks to you guys for watching.